the governance at the local level, and where women can actually have an input in shaping and restructuring what the economic system looks like, right? And what the market system looks like. And so, we are planning in the next year to grow our global network from 120 organizations in 35 countries to over 300, particularly including women's cooperatives, women's associations. And we're planning to do, research on them, when we work with them, build their advocacy capacity, connect them with other organizations within their countries to then, advocate for change that's going to set up a different environment, for women's economic participation. What are the inputs? What's the impact of doing that? Because we believe that without that piece, we're not going to really see women come out of poverty, and we're not going to see real gender equality for women and men. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of the panelists for really setting up the day and presenting a range of important issues and also strategies. We have about 10 minutes for discussion, and we'd really like to open it up to the audience. We have a mic here, and Maya, maybe I'll take care of the time. You've been doing such a fabulous job of it so far. And if you could maybe pass the mic around, we'll maybe take 3 or 4 questions, do one round of questions. Well, we've just asked you to introduce yourself briefly and keep your questions fairly short so we can get lots of them in. So I think we have a gentleman here, a woman here. So maybe you could start over there and move.
It's on. Also, earlier this week in the New York civic technology community, there was discussion on so-called platform cooperatives. So in response to the mention of Uber and the Women Partnership. So do you believe that perhaps there can be alternative models, so as opposed to these top-down so-called sharing economy models of enterprise? Do you think there can be any alternatives that are much more inclusive and bottom-up? So really a modern version of the work on cooperative. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. So let's take a few more questions, and then we'll see who in the panel would like to respond.
Hi, thank you all so much. My name is Ginger Boyd. I'm from the New School. My question, I think it's for Shauna. You said 33% like critical mass, and I was wondering if you could talk more about like that specific number and where that comes from, just to get a sense of like how we can scale that in different spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Jordan from the Royal Academy of Science International Trust. Sakiko left, but my 2 points very quickly to Shauna and to Dan. There are 2 processes which will be ongoing in 2016. One, the Statistical Commission and Division will be working on the indicators for the goals. And secondly, the work of the Committee on Development Policy in creating the for approval next December in 2016 of the Quadrennial Comprehensive Policy Review for Development. If we think that the ship is sailing on September 30th or the end of this year, we are mistaken. There is much work to do, and the QCPR process is totally closed to civil society. We don't have a voice, we don't know what they're doing. And women need to be at the table, not the guys, but the women. Thank you. It's not a question, it just, Sakiko left before you could get to her. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Hadia and I'm a student at Columbia University. My question really is to the panel about the idea of reservations. So when I think of what happened with the Millennium Development Goals and how we seem to have this buffet-style selection of what we want to focus on developmentally in terms of countries' priorities, if we have the same thing happen with the SDGs, I'm going to be somewhere in a room like this 20 years from now, and we're going to be having the same conversation. So do you realistically think that we're going to have more success if we allow reservations? And secondly, I was wondering if you could, maybe Shauna, you can talk a little bit about language in terms of the fact that we have, for the UN, we have 2 working languages. We have 190 plus member countries with thousands of languages. How accessible are we trying to make these new rules and these new policies and commitments to the people that are living at the front lines of what's going to happen in the future? Because I speak 3 languages, I'm pretty sure that I know all 8 MDGs, I can't translate them. And I'm a native speaker, so that was the second question. And last piece is, I think we undervalue parenting as a society. The day that we start valuing parenting, we're going to stop being surprised at why 18 to 20 years later we don't have 7 billion people that are all compassionate, all educated, all healthy, all productive, and now enterprising part of the planet. So I think that would be nice to be able to let's start putting a dollar value on parenting and motherhood.
And one last question, and then we'll get some responses.
Thank you for the panelists. And my name is Safa Al-Agib Adam. I'm from Darfur, from Sudan. I'm rather at the peace table. I'm just thinking of what the challenge is. My view is that to empower women, we need to localize the globalization, not to globalize. This is this is the challenge that is facing. Also, we have so many tools. We talk about 1325. We women, we concentrate in the peace and security issues, which is only about security and prevention of war. It is high time also. What does that security mean? How 1325 to be linked to our empowerment with the globalization issues. This is what we need also to take with the all 12 critical areas of concern, not only women in conflict situations, women in a hostile world planet, and we are facing so many challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a great set of questions. I think a number of them were directed to Shauna, so perhaps I'd ask her first to respond.
Thank you very much. The issue of the critical mass, I think, is really important. There are a number of reports out there that basically you've got to get past tokenism. So, I mean, I remember when I was at graduate school, and you'd have one woman on the faculty, and I remember her coming to talk to a group of us, women, and saying, "I'm exhausted. They want women on every committee now. There's only me." So we need that critical mass in order to be able to relax a little bit and get on with the job. So it's a very simplistic explanation, but we have to get beyond tokenism and really get to the point where we're not just the only woman in the room, but we can be equals in the room. 33% is a rough estimate of that, of when that shift happens in the thinking and in the acting. So very, very quick response to that. The gentleman about the moving beyond 2015, absolutely. We've got to keep driving, we've got to keep moving. If we just say, oh, we've done the SDGs, we're good, then I think we're really stuck. Just another issue there. On the SDGs, you have a whole range of them now. If you look at the ones on gender equality and women's empowerment, they're all on the social side. And then you've got issues of equal pay. You've actually got under proposed goal 8, which is on decent work. So we also have to be linking those goals and not just saying, okay, well, we've got one on gender equality, so we're good there. The goals, some of the goals that have a lot of the impact are elsewhere. So when we're looking at implementing beyond 2015, we have to look at some of the other goals, and I would say in particular Goal 8 on decent work. The issue around reservations, just to say, ILO conventions do not allow any reservations. So just in terms of the different types of treaty obligations, how we implement the whole accountability piece of the SDGs, I think, is going to be absolutely key, and I think that was a really important issue that was brought up. I don't think we quite know what that's going to look like yet, but it is going to be essential, and certainly making it different from the MDGs in that perspective. The issue of parenting, couldn't agree more. If we're going to change the relationships in the world of work, we have to change relationships at home. And that's very much about work-family. And it's about saying parenting is important for mothers, it's important for fathers, it has a value to society, and that's a value that society has to recognize. It's also about saying that when we get into the world of work, that value is still important. We learn a lot as parents. We don't come into the world of work completely void of any experience, of any responsibility. We've learned a lot as parents. And that, I think, has to be valued as well. When we go into the world of work, women tend to be in areas that reflect their caring roles at home. And we say, but they do that at home. It's really natural for them. It's really easy for women to do that. So we actually don't have to pay them as much. So I think that whole valuing of parenthood goes all the way through the cycle. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. But really good questions, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Shauna. And I'm sorry, we're running a bit over, and we don't want to squeeze the next panel, which I guarantee is also going to raise a host of fabulous issues for us. So perhaps I could ask Radhika if she wants to comment on either the Uber question or the question about alternative models, or the closed process, the closed SDG process, or anything else.
I'm glad Uber is out there. I would say, alternative sharing economies, I think worker-owned and managed cooperatives are great. And I think it's a great model, but we also have unionized taxi drivers that are being undermined because of Uber, and so as many of my union friends are in the room, I think we need to talk about unionized labor as well as sharing economies. The other process, in terms of the gentleman who talked about, it's not just the one that's coming up really soon in July, is the financing for development, and that's where really a lot of the structural issues are being negotiated, and whatever happens there is going to inform it. So there is the Women's Working Group on Financing for Development, they're following those discussions, but they're not easy to get our voices in and have much of an influence on this.
Great, thank
So
you.
quickly,
Yeah, Pat, I think maybe the localization question, or anything else you'd like to respond to.
Sure. I also wanted to just say something quickly about the critical mass piece, because right after the historic elections in South Africa, I went and I did lots of interviews with female parliamentarians, and at that point, I think it was like 25% quota that they had for women. And what you found is that in the larger body, with the 25%, they could sort of get to a bit of critical mass. But then when you started to go into different committees where you might be, once again, the only woman, where there was no woman at all, then that became an issue. So when we look at what the power of that critical mass, 33%, could be, we not only need to look at the large bodies, but then if there are smaller decision-making bodies that are part of that large bodies, how that's going to be affected, because 33% may not be enough, So that's one of the things I wanted to point out. I also wanted to say that I very much agree with and support, Radhika's list of requirements. And I think that list of requirements really supports the notion that we have to have these local solutions to globalization, as my sister from Sudan says. And I think the work that we're doing at Women Thrive also suggests that. And it supports this notion that this correct notion that, in fact, while we have these goals, we need to understand that these are really very complex processes, and that they are very context specific, and that there isn't going to be a one size fits all, for any of these things.
Thank you. Great.
And Jenny, if I can come in just
Please
with
do.
one thought, particularly on the local solution, we also have to think about the local finance solution and how we really get the financing, quote unquote, down on the ground, particularly as we're having all those global processes and global ambitions which raise funds globally, distribute them, and then through countries largely, where we still have a very antiquated understanding of country ownership as being primarily and exclusively the government, and leaving it up to the government to ensure that some money reaches the ground. And we really have to think about instruments and financing channels that allow this money to reach affected groups and people on the ground directly. And I think this is the biggest challenge that we have in terms of implementation and seeing outcomes with finance provision for all of the global goals that we are setting.
Thank you so much. So we're going to have to close this, this very lively first discussion. Thank you, first of all, to our fabulous panel and also to the participants in the audience. We're going to move quickly, since we are running over, we're going to move quickly to our next panel. We have a couple of quick announcements, though. The Wi-Fi password is, the connection is orange, and then the password